In this week's video, we're back in North Norfolk looking for some rarities that we saw at the end of last year, some new ones and some surprises.
Welcome back to another video, folks. This one began with about a 4.5 hour drive into East Anglia. When we arrived it was late, so we settled down. I woke up early and had a quick walk before our busy birding day began.
Good morning, folks. We are back in North Norfolk, currently at RSPB Titchwell Marsh. Kaylee's getting ready in the van. I'm going for a walk down the beach. Then we're going to move on around the North Norfolk coast. So stick with us for all of that, it should be fun.
This was to be quite a brief visit to Titchwell this morning, as today we had quite a few target species to find. But before we headed off, there was potentially a species here I wanted to see. That meant heading down towards the beach. En route, although silhouetted, there were plenty of water birds on both the salt marsh and the fresh marsh, with good numbers of lapwing, widgeon and teal, and above my head small flocks of geese almost constantly flying over. The place was alive with the sound of birds. After a short walk I arrived at the beach. Why was I here though? Well, I'd come to hopefully find snow buntings. There'd been 2 recorded on the beach over previous days. Although seemingly these birds were covering quite a large area, with records being in various places. So I went left first. As I power walked across the sand, I did stop a couple of times briefly to look at some of the many birds on the shoreline. There was a flock of, well, I'm not sure what. Are these sanderling or dunlin? You guys, perhaps you can help me out. There were a good few noisy oyster catchers, and on the sea I did spot this sleeping red-breasted merganser. But at that end of the beach I couldn't track down the snow buntings, so I turned back and went the other way. I did walk a reasonable distance, but still the snow buntings were nowhere to be found. So as much as I was enjoying my lovely sunny winter's walk on the beach, I had to head back to the van, to Kaylee, and to the numerous target species we were looking for today. Luckily, we did have another chance at snow buntings a little later in the video. Our next stop was about half an hour down the road, to Stiff Key, to try and find a species we dipped in one of our recent videos.
Hey folks, our first target species of the day, if we can find it, is Glossy Ibis. There are apparently 3 in a flooded field quite close to where we are in Stiff Key. So let's see if we can find them.
The 3 Glossy Ibis that we were looking for had been reported only about half an hour before we arrived, and had been seen at this location on and off for the last few days, so we were pretty confident. We scanned the pool from the road and couldn't see any ibises, so we went down some steps to a wooded track which takes you closer to the pool. As much as we scanned the pool though, the ibises were nowhere to be seen. The only long-legged bird with a curvy beak was a curlew. Whilst we were there we got chatting to another birder. When he'd arrived he'd seen some other people with binoculars heading on the lane we'd parked but in the other direction. Apparently that goes towards Stiff Key Marsh, so we thought we'd give that a chance, just in case the ibises had moved. When we arrived, we looked out on the vast marsh in front of us, and although initially the Glossy Ibis weren't immediately obvious, the other birder we were with soon spotted them over to our left. First, he spotted one, and then the other 2. As they were a little distant, we walked on a path alongside the marsh to try and get a better view of these stunning looking ibises. Now if you remember in a recent video we were up in Lancashire and there was one of these, apparently at Hesketh Outmarsh. Unfortunately that bird moved on minutes before we arrived. So connecting with these 3 beauties here today was even more satisfying. This once rare species is now a regular in the UK and has successfully bred here in 2022. Records have since continued to increase, with an influx in 2025. In some instances, there were several hundred Glossy Ibis in the UK at one time. Some of those birds stuck around for the winter and are still present. I make a tentative prediction that sometime in the near future, Glossy Ibises will be a regular breeder in Britain. I know I'd be happy to see more of them here.
We needed help, folks, but we got the Glossy Ibis. Not only did we get one Glossy Ibis, we got 3 Glossy Ibis, which was amazing. It looks like they've moved from the pool by the road to the marsh at Stiffkey. We saw another birder and he suggested maybe walking up the lane because he'd seen some other birders. Anyway, we arrived and he picked them out on the marsh.
He was slightly in front of us and he went, "It's over."
Brilliant, absolutely ace, especially after dipping them on that other video recently. Right, we're moving on now towards Sheringham.
The reason we were going to Sheringham was to find a bird that we saw at the end of 2025, a very rare subspecies that this time we could count on our year list.
Hey folks, we're back in Sheringham, looking for the Eastern Black Redstart that's here. We need to go around this way, getting lost. Looks like there might be some people ahead looking at something, so this is already quite encouraging.
There were a small number of birders near the ornamental garden just on the seafront. They had been looking at the Black Redstart, but it had disappeared. Luckily for us, its absence was only brief, as it soon flew and landed on a wall not too far from us. The Black Redstart as a species is a pretty rare bird in the UK, with less than 100 breeding pairs. That number does increase a little bit in the winter, with some birds from the continent visiting, but a far from common species. This individual is an Eastern Black Redstart, the Central Asian subspecies. These birds are super rare, with the first accepted record being at Dungeness in Kent in 1981. Since, there has been less than 20 accepted records, with a little influx in 2016 and 2 birds being present at the tail end of 2025. This fantastic individual being one of them. We visited here at the tail end of last year to try and get a glimpse of this wonderful bird, and we did see it hopping around buildings, but not as close or in as good light as this. Watching this rare visitor hopping around the ornamental gardens in Sheringham was a true privilege. This bird is awesome and was really difficult to leave, but we did have to go, as Kaylee wanted to chance another rare subspecies nearby.
Hey folks, we're back in the van, but that was definitely a success. The Black Redstart showed better than last time we were here. So much so that Kaylee's Kaylee's celebrating with a sandwich.
Good as well.
Yum, yum, yum. Right, let's move on.
Our next and rather brief stop on our quick-fire birding tour of North Norfolk was Bintry Mill. We'd visited here at the tail end of 2025 too, in the hope of seeing a black-bellied dipper, a rare continental subspecies of our dipper. When we arrived though, we spoke to another birder who was leaving. He'd been here for half an hour or so and not seen it. And then we talked to the local farmer who said it hadn't been seen in a couple of days. Reasonably short on time, as we did have a couple more target species. We left and headed back towards the coast.
50 snow buntings.
Apparently, here at Winterton-on-Sea, there's over 50 snow buntings. So we're going to go and have a look for them now. That's quite exciting. I love snow buntings, although I've seen them a few times. I think the most we've ever seen is like a couple at once, isn't it? So 50.
Apparently, they'd been seen at the north end of the car park. When we arrived, initially we couldn't see them. That was until a flock of birds landed on one of the shed roofs. These were our snow buntings. The only problem was, they were only there for seconds. We watched the flock doing circuits of the beach, occasionally landing and then being spooked by birders or dog walkers. Luckily though, eventually they arrived back near us on the shed roof. We were sure not to get too close as we didn't want to spook them, but we were close enough to get some absolutely fantastic views. Now, I've mentioned this species in many previous videos as I absolutely love them. Snow buntings do breed in the UK, up in the Scottish Highlands, but are pretty rare with less than 100 breeding pairs. These birds disperse to coastal areas in the winter, and are often joined by wintering snow buntings from the continent. This flock here was by far the largest number of snow buntings we've seen in one place at one time. In fact, I don't remember ever seeing more than just a couple of them. So being stood in view of this flock was mind-blowingly exciting. They remained on the shed roof for a short while before coming down to the floor to feed. We happily watched them feeding on the sand for quite a while before eventually the flock flew off down the beach again, leaving us absolutely over the moon.
Well, that was absolutely incredible.
That was amazing.
There was just, like, how many did you count?
I counted 30, another lady counted 29, and he counted
Well, I didn't
39
count. I don't know. I didn't count any. I was just looking at them. But I've never ever seen more than just a few snow buntings in one place. So seeing that many was just, it was well worth coming.
They're a skittish flock though, aren't
They were skittish. They were being spooked by pretty much everything and doing circuits, but eventually they landed on like a roof and then onto the ground from there and then disappeared. But wow.
That was amazing. That's a must see, that.
That was, yeah. I'm so glad we did. We were unsure whether we were going to chance it, but I'm so glad we did.
And me.
That was epic. Right, we've got one more little journey before it goes dark.
Let's go see the kite.
Let's hope it's still there.
I'm sure you've probably guessed based on where we are. The kite that we're talking about is the mega rare black-winged kite that's been in this general area for months. We saw it very distantly at Ludden Bridge just before New Year, but since it's relocated to somewhere a little less convenient.
Hey folks, we are on our last bit of birding of the day. It's soon to be going dark. We've come back to try and find the black-winged kite, that mega rare bird of prey that's here. The only problem is, last time it was really conveniently viewed from a bridge. This time, I've been told it's a very, very long walk. Regardless, we're going to go to it, try and get there before it goes dark and hope it's there. So stick with us.
We'd been told to first head towards a raptor viewpoint. Then beyond that there was a long straight which takes you to a pumping station where people were viewing the kite from. The track to the raptor viewpoint was very muddy, which made for slow progress. So after half an hour or more, we were still walking.
Hey folks, we've walked quite a way already, and it looks like there's plenty still to go.
Turn the camera around so I can see the distance.
Yeah, let me show you.
Yes, we definitely had more to go. Somewhere in the far distance there's the pumping station. Fearing we were losing the light, we picked up pace. Over the marshland to our right, we could see a bunch of harriers in the distance, presumably coming into roost. These were all silhouettes, but I believe they're marsh harriers. Eventually we got close to the pumping station and saw some other birders leaving. We asked them if the kite was still there. Thankfully, they said yes, which was a genuine relief after that walk. They did tell us though that the kite was at quite a distance. When we arrived and looked out, they weren't wrong. It was even further away than last time we saw it. It was sat at the top of the tree in the far distance just to the right of a barn. We got chatting to another birder who said that was the furthest away he'd seen it since it was here. Well, just our luck. We decided to stick around in the hope that it might eventually move closer. Whilst we waited, we did have the pleasure of watching a wonderful barn owl hunting. And in a distant field, there was a flock of cranes. Fantastic, there's another bird for our year list. The common crane was once extinct in the UK, but made a comeback in 1979. And now, there's around 80 breeding pairs. Wow, that's a great success story, and a lovely unexpected treat for us. We continued watching the marsh and the trees, but our black-winged kite didn't budge. It seemed pretty settled in that distant tree. Now, if you haven't watched the previous video with this kite, it's really, really rare. with the first accepted record of this species being only a few years ago, in 2023. Fast forward to last year, 2025, another one showed up in Gloucestershire, before relocating again to Norfolk. This is when we saw it. So this bird here is likely to be only the second individual of this species ever seen on mainland Britain. After it being in the tree for a while, it did finally take off, although I wasn't ready with the camera at all, hence the really shaky footage trying to follow it. Unfortunately, we lost it. Whilst trying to relocate it, I did find another bird of prey, and another lovely surprise. A female ringtail hen harrier. These are incredible birds and hard to find at the best of times. Now though, it was going dark and we had got what we'd come for, so we headed on the long straight back towards the raptor viewpoint, which by now was absolutely wedged full of birders. We asked if they'd seen anything. It turned out the Black-winged Kite had flown in front of them and landed to go to roost in an even more distant tree. I didn't even try to find it, I left them to it, and we headed back towards the van.
Hey folks,
That's it.
we got it. It was incredibly distant.
We did get 15 crane
Yeah, we did find 15 crane, also reasonably distant,
and a hen harrier.
and an amazing female hen harrier, and a barn owl. Yeah, not a bad evening really. The kite was in a tree for a while. I couldn't get any steady footage.
That was mega distant.
It was so distant.
Worse than last time.
Yeah, further than last time. And it did fly at one point. And I didn't quite follow it with the camera, unfortunately. But we got it. We got it. So I'd say that was a pretty seriously successful day, wouldn't you?
We've done really well.
We've done well today.
What am I having for tea then?
I don't know. What should we have for tea? We've got about a mile's walk back before we can eat anything.
We celebrated that long but successful day with a couple of pints and a burger. Then we settled down for the night. The following morning we woke up with a couple of target species planned on the way home. Whilst Kaylee was getting ready, I wandered around where we'd parked for the night.
Morning folks, we've just got up and I'm waiting for Kaylee to get ready, and I'm listening to a song thrush that's mimicked bearded tits about half a dozen times. I even put Merlin on and it comes up as bearded reedling, which is mental. What a clever song thrush.
Our plan on the way home was to visit Deeping Lakes in Lincolnshire. En route though, we stopped off at Deeping High Bank, only about a mile away from Deeping Lakes, as earlier in the day and on previous days there'd been a snow goose reported that had been hanging around in a distant field with a flock of hooper swans. And it didn't take us long to find the flock of hooper swans. The challenge now was to try and find a snow goose amongst them. That unfortunately didn't go quite as we'd hoped.
Hello folks, we've stopped off at Deeping Lakes. On the way we nipped into Deeping High Bank as there'd been a snow goose frequenting with a flock of hooper swans.
It's extremely distant, I can
Yeah.
see.
It's very distant and there's lots of places like dips and stuff that it could have hidden in, so unfortunately we didn't find it.
I need a better scope.
We need a better scope.
Definitely need a better scope.
So we've come, before we go home, we've come to Deeping Lakes to have a quick mooch, so join us for that.
We hadn't just come here for a mooch, we did have a target species, the long-eared owl. There's usually at least one roosting in a tree near one of the hides, so that's the direction we headed. Although the path to the hide was extremely muddy. In the car park we'd spoken to a birder who said that he hadn't seen the long-eared owl today, but as we arrived at the hide there was someone coming out saying they had seen it, but it was quite hard to see as it was well back in the tree obscured by ivy. So there's another challenge. You had to wedge yourself right in the corner of the hide and peer through the ivy deep into the tree where you could only really see the owl's tummy. I genuinely struggled to see it, but Kaylee picked it out after a short search. We then went outside right next to the hide to see if we could see it from there. And we could, but there was quite a lot of vegetation in the way. Regardless, we did see it, and that's another successful tick for our year list. Now, I thought I'd include some footage from last year when we were here, just to show you what this wonderful bird looks like. Long-eared owls are UK's most secretive owl, being entirely nocturnal. Generally, these birds are only usually seen in roost, like this one. Almost out of time, and with our long-eared owl ticked off the list, we headed back towards the van, planning on going home, until we got near the van and saw on the riverbank somebody watching something in a scope. We asked what they were looking at. They said in the distance they could see an otter. Well, we couldn't pass on that, could we? So we followed them down the riverbank, and lo and behold, the otter was there, feeding on the opposite bank. Otters are incredible animals to watch. I think the last time we saw one of these was on our boat trip on Mull. Amazing, what an absolute privilege to watch. These animals were brought back from near extinction in the UK back in the 50s and 60s with the help of pesticide bans and efforts to clean up waterways, and it's really worked. Otters have made a really positive comeback and are now present in every county in England, Wales and throughout Scotland. What an incredible treat to end our weekend with.
Hey folks,
Hey.
So we did find the long-eared owl.
We did.
Although it was far from showing well.
We got about that much of his tummy.
Yeah, it was tucked right in to the trunk of the tree behind a load of ivy, and it was a challenge to find. Actually, you did well, really, didn't you? Spotting it. Kaylee had to find it for me after someone
Then I had to find it for somebody else.
Yeah.
And, yeah. That was difficult for everyone.
But it is off the year list, which is excellent. Unfortunately, though, now we have run out of time. So we've got to head home. So
Another day.
I want another day as well, or more. It's been a good weekend though. We've hit some really good birds. Thanks so much for watching. Please like
Please subscribe.
and please press the notification bell.
See you next time.
Bye bye.